Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. We have a record-breaking drone attack on the Russian Federation territory. The kaboom happened in the town of Dolabugi. It is 1,200 kilometers away from Ukrainian border, the Republic of Tatarstan, Russia. On this image you may see the drone itself. It looks very similar to a small airplane like Cessna 150, 152 or the ultralight airplane. We're gonna speak about the particular type a little later. Now let's speak about what actually was targeted over there. Well, there is a factory which produces the drones for the Russian army, including Shahi drones and other types. There were at least 2 of the strikes, and what we see here on the video is the second one. We also may see some of the Russian police at the place. It means that they arrived after the first strike. The second drone hit the barracks with some of the students who were working at the factory. Assembling the military drones for the Russian army was their practice. Even though they are young and civilians, but still they brought lots of the harm for Ukraine, constructing those drones in the factory. Those Russian drones are used for exactly the same purpose, to target the Ukrainian civilian, mostly infrastructure. So those barracks are also legitimate targets for Ukraine. Probably after seeing this, Russian students would think twice before choosing to go for this kind of the practice. But again, there are no any casualties, just wounded personnel. All of them were delivered to the local hospitals. The question is where the first drone struck this fact, because this is the outcome of the second strike. Hopefully this factory was significantly damaged. We are waiting for the satellite images from the place. By the way, we have this article dated from the last summer, August 12, 2023, where Russian factory is using underage workers to assemble Iranian suicide drones. So those students are sometimes even below 18 years old. They go for that kind of the practice after they graduate from the 9th grade of the school. Well, basically Ukraine has no other choice but to target those kind of the facilities, because Ukrainian civilians suffer under the attacks of the Russian Shahed drones. Alright, about the particular drone which was used for this strike, some Russian media sources say that it is the Ukrainian-made drone. Let me show you the picture. They say that it is UJ-22, but I'm not sure about this particular unit because it looks differently based on a video from the place. The main evidence that it is not UJ-22, you may see that it has no cockpit, and here we have the straight line towards the wing. But if we zoom into the screenshot, clearly there is the step before the wing root, and here we have the strut which supports the wing. I'll just delete it and you'll see it yourself. So it's different drone, or I may say even airplane, which could have been converted to the drone. By the way, my friends, the full video is available on my Telegram channel. You may check it out in the video description just below. I constantly update all the information about the situation in Ukraine all day long on my Telegram channel, so the guys from Telegram already know this story with a short explanation of mine. You may find the link to Telegram in the video description just below, or just scan the QR code available on the screen. By the way, Russians recovered the debris of the drone. Well, for me it's really hard to tell of what kind of the drone was used over there. This one is from the first strike. I think that this one looks similar to the Bayraktar TB2 with this kind of the bow head and the empennage on the back and the main payload on the front. Well, I could be wrong, but it doesn't look like UJ-22. You see, UJ has an electrical engine, and for this sort of the distance, it should be a piston engine. Also, the landing gear construction doesn't look similar to what we have just seen. What looks pretty much similar to this image, however, is Ukrainian-made ultralight airplane Aeroprakt. For example, the Aeroprakt 22, which is equipped with a Rotex piston engine, so with extra fuel tanks, I believe that it might cover that distance. The fuel consumption is very low for this thing. It's quite popular in the United States and also in Australia. I've flown it a couple of times, really fantastic and quite cheap machine. So possibly, I think that there is the possibility that those airplanes could have been converted into the drones. So the payload is more than 160 kilograms, a very reliable engine and construction in general. And if you want to make a pure drone out of it, you don't need to invest into the flight instruments and into many other things that you don't really need for the drone, which makes it even more cheaper. So good idea, probably Ukraine already got it and started to produce those. The problem with this theory that Russians destroyed the factory where those aircrafts were produced. But engineers of the factory might use the other facilities if Ukraine really needs it. I found a used variant for 61,700 euros. This is the new version of the aircraft. Obviously it's much more expensive, but the old version is kind of cheap, especially in a drone version, potentially. If we compare it to what those airplanes or the drones might potentially do, I would say that the price is not really expensive. Just for you to understand the range and the scale of this strike, the Russian drone facility is located somewhere in this place. As I say to you, more than 1,200 kilometers from Ukrainian border. It's a new record distance. The vast and mainly empty Russian territory actually helps Ukrainian drones to reach the place, because Russia is unable to cover its own territory with air defense systems, and Ukrainian drones usually fly over the inhabited areas. Russians do not have special systems to identify and report the drone positions immediately, as Ukraine has. That's why Ukraine is so successful in shutting down the Russian Shahed drones over its territory. For example, the last night Russia launched 10 of the Shahed drones, from which 9 were shot down by Ukrainian air defense. But you know what? After checking the Russian propaganda, I've watched that they came out with some sort of the new version. They say that this attack from Ukraine is mainly not possible because of the distance, and they say that the attack could have happened from Kazakhstan territory, from the northern Kazakhstan, somewhere in October region. In this case, it's just 600 kilometers, not 2 times greater as with the version from Ukraine. And this idea came out from the Russian officials, from their military advisors, from their MPs as well. It's kind of strange since Kazakhstan is the military ally of the Russian Federation. But the Russian propaganda also works against their allies. For Russia, all of the independent republics which founded after the Soviet Union collapse should go back again to the Russian Empire. Including Kazakhstan, this is the Russian policy. That's why they always blame even the friendly countries towards them, because they want to invade them. It is not the first time I heard that the Russian officials blame Kazakhstan for something. Some of the Z bloggers even say that there are lots of the Koreans in Kazakhstan and they are the allies of Ukraine. That's why they launched this drone attack on the Russian drone facility. So it's a very strange version, but they say about it. And just to continue this kaboom flash mob in Russia, one more oil refinery was targeted also in the Republic of Tatarstan, Russia. The city of Nizhny Kamsk, it's one of the biggest Russian oil refineries. It goes into the top 5, which produces the Russian benzene and diesel. Again, a drone attack, which happened early morning. It's actually a good sign, because the United States officials say openly that they're against the Ukrainian attacks on the Russian territory. Blinken, USA doesn't support or facilitate Ukrainian strikes outside the Ukrainian territory, dated from yesterday. But we see the result. After some break, Ukraine continued to target the Russian facilities, including the most vulnerable part, oil refineries. So maybe the United States of America are just saying that they do not support those kind of the attacks for public, but behind the curtains they are not willing to stop Ukraine. I think that today's strike shows us the real picture. It's kind of hard to get the point, because Zelensky also said that the United States are against those kind of the attacks. So what politicians say and what they do is total difference. What Ukraine does, that it hits those very sophisticated areas of the Russian oil refineries, pillars with lots of the tubes and sensitive equipment. They're quite tall and have the size of the big building. Without the pillars, the Russian oil refineries or any kind of the refineries would not continue to operate. It is impossible to hide those from the external factors. Well, maybe Russians might create some sort of the big net around those kind of the facilities, but it is at first time consuming, and also this net or mesh could be penetrated by the drone too. Inside those pillars there is the crude oil distillation process ongoing. It is shown over here. Basically crude oil is getting heat to some sort of the temperature, and then it goes to different pipes, depends on what fuel you want to obtain. This equipment is very precise and sensitive to obtain exact fuel which you need. All of those Russian refineries which were modernized from the Soviet Union are using the Western-made equipment and the Western technologies. So it is impossible to replace the lost Russian equipment, for example, with Chinese one. You need to rebuild the factory. So as for me, Russia absolutely has no option to avoid the big fuel crisis, which will happen for sure if Ukraine continues those strikes. The Russian diesel is already more expensive compared to what it was a few months ago. The fuel crisis in Russia would spread to the other branches of the Russian economy. The most hard it will be for the Russian logistics. In its turn, it will create a chain reaction touching almost everything in Russia. But still, I believe that Putin will have enough diesel to refuel his army fighting in Ukraine. Even in critical phase, then the Russian economy will suffer because of the fuel crisis. He has the goal in Ukraine. He doesn't care that much about his own economy rather than the war. But obviously Russians wouldn't like what will happen to their country. Potentially inflation will be dramatic for them in this case, and Vladimir Putin would start gradually to lose his popularity, because I still believe that he has the support of the major part of the Russian society, which is sick with the Russian chauvinism virus. The Russian Chief of Defense Committee Kartapolov today in his interview to journalists say that the attacks on the Russian territory will finish, then Russia occupies Kiev. Well, he said liberates, but it's not a proper word in that case. It means that the attacks on Russia will continue constantly, because there is no chance for them to enter Kiev. Also, there are some of the kabooms reported in Kursk. The special military operation indeed goes according to plan. The CNN article says that Ukraine introduced the artificial intelligence into their drones for them to be more effective against the Russian oil refineries. I'm sure that that kind of the technology Ukraine obtained from our Western allies, so they may say that they're against those strikes, but they still support Ukraine. Meanwhile, Kadyrov says that the Russian air defense is very powerful. He said that even if 5,000 airplanes enter Russia, they all will be shot down by the mighty Russian air defense, but we see a different picture today.
5000 km, that's Zarastan. Zarastan.
This guy thinks that it seems like it's unreal. Guys, before we go to the military map review, I want to share my thanks to the patrons who recently joined my Patreon and who are my long-term supporters on my Patreon page. Guys, you really help a lot for the job that I do on YouTube. Recently, most of my videos were restricted by YouTube, so I have to rely on my supporters on Patreon and also on the sponsorship of this YouTube channel. You may find some of the links in the video description just below if you want to support the job that I do. Thank you so much for your kind support. Alright, let's go back to our topic. Vodene, Russia definitely moved out there. Even yesterday, this advancement of the Russian army was shown on a different map source, but today we have it on a deep state military map, so it is yesterday and it is today. They've took this street with the houses. So in general about this area, a Russian attack was ambushed over here, but here they were successful in a way. Probably they sent some of the reinforcements to this place, not to Tanenka. Here's the Bakhmut area, and the Russians propelled towards Ivanovsk. They occupy the majority of this village, taking this part under control. This is some sort of the factory or industrial part of the small town of Ivanovsk. The fight now is ongoing in all of the Ivanovsk because it is in a gray area. It is just a matter of time that Russia occupies Ivanovsk, so potentially they might have two of the vectors of the assault towards the Chasiv Yar. One is over here and the other one is over here. Now Ukraine tries to cut the supply lines for the Russian army advancement, the roads and the bridges. One of the bridges near Ivanovsk was capoted with the help of the drone vehicle. The situation also changed near to Verboa. The gray area extended a bit, so it was yesterday, it is today, just over here. It was a light advancement of the Russian army. Honestly, I'm very surprised that Ukraine still keeps this area under its control, including Robotyne village. Because we understand that Russia keeps their best forces out there, paratroopers, but sometimes they have losses, many more losses compared to Ukraine. As for the vehicle losses for the last 4 days, Russia lost 225, Ukraine 89 of the vehicles. Still, Russia loses many more compared to Ukraine. Those tables are published for each day, and here we have Sukhoi 27 SM, presumably friendly fire. We spoke about the case in one of my videos. Let's go to the other military map update. Here we have it from the Institute for the Study of War, and they say, what is very worrying as for me, that Russians went behind Berdichi, crossing the river. Here they say that Russians advanced near to Orlivka and over here, so potentially Russia might go to the open field place where there are no any villages and take all of this part. Ukraine has no significant defense lines in this place, unfortunately. Again, I found this update just from the ISW. It's hard to confirm it, because other analytics doesn't give this information, and I haven't heard that Russia advanced behind Berdichi. From the Michael 73 analytic, we have the confirmation that Russians advanced in Ivanovsk. That's it. Just a regular image from the Russian military airfield, a Russian helicopter parked on a Russian fighter jet. Probably the apron is kind of small, so they have to be efficient with the space. Yeah, I know that it's decoy, don't write me it in the comments, please. Guys, we have some of the videos from the front lines, but unfortunately because of these platform restrictions, I cannot publish them over here, so please check out my Telegram channel, you know where to look for it. Meanwhile, one more crazy dictator tests his new missiles. The name of it is Hwasong-pho 16HA. It is a middle up to long-range missile. I guess that the North Korea is unable to produce that sophisticated weaponry on its own. Obviously, they obtain technologies from China and Russia. From what we see, that this part is very similar to the Russian hypersonic missile Zircon. So at first it accelerates with the help of this part and then disassembles and flies on a hypersonic speed. Definitely they launched it. Iran confirmed and even published the pictures of their lost generals and other officers after Israeli attack on Damascus. A main general responsible for Iranian proxies in Yemen, Syria, in Hamas, in the Gaza Strip was capoted with this strike. So Israel intelligence really works well when it wants to work. It seems like Russia developed some sort of the new electronic warfare or anti-drone system. They installed it just on the grill of their T-90 tank. Nevertheless, this tank was targeted right into the aft part with the help of the FPV drone, and crew abandoned this vehicle. You may see that hatches are open. It tells that this thing doesn't really work. This time, Kyrgyzstan, the ex-Soviet Republic, refused to accept the Russian pay system Mir, the Russian analog of Visa or MasterCard. And you know what? Kyrgyzstan is also a military ally of Russia. So Russians might use those cards in Russia. The other countries just ban it because they're afraid to get under the secondary sanctions applied by United States and European allies. Oh my god, we have a cringe out here. Some of the Orthodox Christian activists in Russia, in Rostov-on-Don city, took the flowers from the memorial of the Crocus City Hall attack and they delivered those flowers to the cemetery where Russian soldiers are being buried. No words. This is the Republic of Bashkortostan in 2022. Many of the local volunteers are going to Ukraine. Let's watch how they celebrate. The happiness is above the sky. The good news for those soldiers that they all came back, but somehow they're not dancing any longer. Maybe you can tell me why. Let's watch the video. It was filmed again in Bashkortostan. The soldiers were delivered in a very comfortable boxes, as you may see, and yes, it's now a very difficult task to cause them to dance again. I think it's not possible. Something tells me that they're not happy any longer. Some of the town near Moscow, locals just tag in the mud. The mud, as you can see, is just in front of the residential buildings. It might happen only in Russia. A trash collapse in the Russian Dagestan. The thing is, after the Crocus Hall attack, Russians detained many of Tajiks in this republic. A great part of those Tajiks was working for the local trash company, and now there is no one to remove the trash from the streets. My friends, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. And also, if you want to support me, you may check out some of the links in the video description just below. You may support me on Patreon, buy me on Ko-fi, or just on this YouTube channel. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.